Clara Weston did not scream when her mother signed the paper. She did not beg when Horace dragged her onto the auction platform. She stood in the blazing Arizona sun, wrists bound with rope, and let her tears fall into the dust without making a sound. 23 years of silence had taught her that crying only made them hit harder. But when Virgil Sloane reached for her face and called her fresh stock, something inside Clara snapped. She spat in his eye, and that single act of defiance set everything in motion. If this story already grips your heart, subscribe to our channel and stay until the very end. Comment below with the city you are watching from, so I can see how far Clara's journey has traveled. Clara Weston stood on a wooden platform in the center of Copper Creek, her wrists bound with rough hemp rope. The sun beat down without mercy. Sweat ran down her back. Her cotton dress clung to her skin, already stained with dust from the ride into town. She was 23 years old, and today her mother had sold her. Horace Pruitt stood to her left, his hand clamped around her arm like she might bolt. His grip would leave bruises. It always did. He leaned close and hissed into her ear. "You make trouble, girl, I'll break your other wrist this time." Clara said nothing. She had learned silence the way other children learned prayers. It kept her alive. It kept the beatings shorter. But it had never kept her safe. Her mother Edna stood behind Horace, clutching her shawl despite the heat. She would not meet Clara's eyes. She had not met them since breakfast when she told Clara to put on her cleanest dress because company was coming. Company. That was the word she used. A crowd gathered in the street. Miners, drifters, cowboys passing through. Women watched from doorways, some with pity, most with relief that it was not their daughter on the platform today. A man in a black coat pushed through the crowd. Virgil Sloane. He owned the Dusty Rose Saloon at the edge of town. Everyone in Copper Creek knew what happened to women who worked there. Everyone pretended not to. Sloane climbed the platform steps slowly, savoring the attention. He wore silver rings on every finger. His boots were polished. His smile never reached his eyes. "Well now," he said, circling Clara like a buyer inspecting a horse. "Horace, you old bastard, you weren't lying." Horace laughed a wet, ugly sound. "Told you she'd be worth the trip. Young, strong, ain't been touched by no man neither. You can check if you want." Clara's stomach turned. She kept her face empty. She had learned that too. Sloane stopped in front of her. He lifted her chin with one finger, forcing her to meet his gaze. His breath smelled of whiskey and tobacco. "Look at me, girl." Clara looked. "You know what I am." She knew. "You know where you're going." She knew that too. "Good." Sloane smiled. "Smart ones learn faster. Dumb ones get hurt." He reached up and touched her hair, rubbing a strand between his fingers like he was testing fabric. Something cracked inside Clara. Something that had been bending for 23 years. She spat in his face. The crowd gasped. Sloane stumbled backward, wiping his eye. Horace's hand cracked across Clara's cheek so fast she did not see it coming. She fell to her knees, ears ringing, tasting blood. "You stupid little—" Horace raised his hand again. "Enough!" The voice came from the edge of the crowd, low, steady. It cut through the noise like a blade through rope. A man stepped forward. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a worn leather vest and dusty boots. Dark hair touched his collar. A hat shaded his face. He moved with the unhurried confidence of someone who had nothing to prove and nothing to fear. The crowd parted for him without being asked. Horace lowered his hand slowly. "This ain't your business, stranger." "Reckon I'm making it my business." The man stopped at the base of the platform. He looked up at Sloane, then at Horace, then at Clara, still kneeling in the dust. "What's her price?" Sloane recovered his composure. He straightened his coat and forced a smile. "She ain't for sale to the public, friend. This here's a private arrangement. Everything's for sale in Copper Creek. What's her price?" $200. Sloane's smile widened. "Plus the $600 Horace owes me in gambling debts. $800 total. You got that kind of money, cowboy?" The stranger reached into his vest. He pulled out a leather pouch and tossed it onto the platform at Sloane's feet. It landed with a heavy thud. 1,000. Whole season's cattle earnings. Count it. The crowd murmured. Sloane's smile faltered. He crouched and opened the pouch, running his fingers through gold coins. His jaw tightened. This don't make sense. He stood slowly. Why would you pay $1,000 for some rancher's unwanted stepdaughter? The stranger did not answer the question. He looked at Horace. The paper. Give it to me. Horace glanced at Sloane, then at the money, then back at the stranger. Greed won. It always did with Horace. He pulled a folded document from his coat and held it out. The stranger took it. He did not read it. He simply tore it in half, then quarters, then let the pieces fall into the dust. She's free. Clara watched the paper scatter in the hot wind. Her debt, her bondage, gone in seconds. Sloane stepped forward, his face reddening. Now wait just a damn minute. You got your money. More than you were owed. Walk away. You can't just... I can. I did. The stranger finally looked at Sloane directly. His eyes were brown, deep-set, utterly calm. You want to make this difficult? We can make it difficult. But I don't think you want that. His hand rested on his belt, not touching the pistol holstered there, not threatening, just resting. It was enough. Sloane held his gaze for a long moment. Then he laughed, a brittle sound with no humor in it. Fine. Take her. She'll be more trouble than she's worth. They always are. He scooped up the money pouch and climbed down from the platform. The crowd parted again as he walked toward the saloon, his silver rings glinting in the sun. Horace started to follow, then stopped. He turned back to Clara, still on her knees, and pointed one thick finger at her. You'll regret this, girl. Mark my words. You'll come crawling back. Clara met his eyes. For the first time in her life, she did not look away. No, she said. I won't. Horace's face twisted. He spat in the dust and walked away. Edna followed without a word, without a glance, without anything that might have resembled goodbye. Clara watched her mother's back until it disappeared around a corner. Something inside her closed like a door. It did not hurt as much as she expected. The stranger climbed the platform steps. He crouched in front of her and pulled a knife from his belt. Clara flinched. Easy. His voice was gentle. Just cutting the rope. He sliced through her bindings with one clean motion. The rope fell away. Clara rubbed her wrists, feeling blood rush back into her fingers. Can you stand? She could. She did. Her legs shook but held. The stranger stepped back, giving her space. He did not touch her. He did not crowd her. He simply waited. Why? Clara's voice came out rough. Why did you do that? You spit in his face. That's not an answer. Maybe it is. He almost smiled. Takes guts to fight back when you're tied up and outnumbered. Figured someone like that deserved a choice. A choice. I got a ranch 12 miles east. Ain't much. Small herd. Half-built barn. Could use help with the work if you're willing. Fair wages. Your own room. You can stay as long as you want, or leave whenever you want. No strings. Clara stared at him. Her whole life, every kindness had come with a price. Every gift had been a debt. Every offer had been a trap. What's the catch? No catch. There's always a catch. The stranger nodded slowly, like he understood why she would think that. My name's Jesse Calhoun. I ain't your family. I ain't your owner. I ain't nothing to you except a man offering work. You say no, I'll give you enough money to get on the next stagecoach out of here. You say yes, I'll take you somewhere no one can drag you back from. Either way, you're free. That paper don't exist no more. Clara looked around the platform. The crowd was dispersing, losing interest now that the show was over. Dust swirled in the street. The sun kept beating down. She had no money, no friends, no family worth claiming. If she walked away now, she would be prey again before sundown. But going with a stranger was its own kind of risk. She knew what men were. She knew what they wanted. She looked at Jesse Calhoun again. He stood with his hands at his sides, not reaching for her, not blocking her path, just waiting. Why do you need help? She asked. Ranch work's hard. Too much for one man. You could hire anyone. Why me? Jesse was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was lower. Because 2 years ago I watched my brother die in a cattle stampede. I couldn't save him. Couldn't do nothing but watch. After that I stopped caring much about anything. He paused. But just now, I watched you spit in the face of a man who bought and sells women. And something in me remembered what it felt like to give a damn. So maybe I'm doing this for you. Or maybe I'm doing it for me. Does it matter? Clara had no answer to that. You don't have to decide now, Jesse said. There's a boarding house 2 streets over. Mrs. Delgado runs it. She's good people. You can stay there tonight, think it over. I'll come by tomorrow morning. If you want to come with me, be outside at dawn. If you don't, I'll leave the stagecoach fare with Mrs. Delgado, and you'll never see me again. He reached into his vest and pulled out a few coins. He placed them on the platform railing, not in her hand, for supper and a room. Then he tipped his hat and walked down the platform steps. Clara watched him cross the street. She watched him untie a buckskin horse from the hitching post. She watched him mount up and turn toward the eastern road. He did not look back. She stood alone on the platform where she had been sold. The rope still lay at her feet. Her wrists still burned from the binding. But the paper was gone, torn to pieces and scattered in the wind. Clara picked up the coins from the railing. They were warm from the sun. She closed her fingers around them and felt something unfamiliar move through her chest. Hope. Small and fragile, and probably foolish, but alive. She climbed down from the platform and walked toward the boarding house. Behind her, the auction block stood empty in the fading light. At the boarding house, a woman with gray-streaked hair and kind eyes opened the door before Clara could knock. "You're the girl from the auction." It was not a question. "Yes, ma'am." "I'm Martha Delgado. Come inside before you fall over." Clara followed her into a small, clean room that smelled of bread and dried herbs. Martha sat her down at a wooden table and placed a bowl of stew in front of her, without asking if she was hungry. Clara ate. She had not realized how empty she was until the first bite hit her stomach. Martha watched her with the practiced eye of someone who had seen hard luck before. "Jesse Calhoun paid for 3 nights. Told me to give you whatever you needed." Clara looked up. "You know him?" "Known him since he came to this territory. Knew his brother too before the accident." Martha's face softened. "Good man, Jesse. Quiet. Keeps to himself mostly. But good." "Why would a good man pay $1,000 for a stranger?" Martha smiled. "Maybe ask him that yourself, if you decide to go." Clara pushed the empty bowl away. Her body ached. Her cheek throbbed where Horace had hit her. She was exhausted in a way that went deeper than bones. "I don't know what to decide." "Then don't. Not tonight." Martha stood and gestured toward a door. "Room's through there. Clean sheets. Lock on the inside. Get some rest. Things look different in the morning." Clara rose on unsteady legs. She walked to the door, then stopped. "Mrs. Delgado." "Yes, my mother signed that paper. She watched them tie my hands and she signed that paper. I keep waiting to feel something about it. Sadness. Anger. Something. But I just feel empty." Martha was quiet for a long moment. "Sometimes," she said finally, "the people who should love us don't. That's not a reflection of our worth. That's a reflection of theirs. You ain't empty, child. You're just learning to fill yourself with something besides their cruelty." Clara had no response to that. She nodded once and went into the room. She locked the door behind her. She lay down on a bed that did not smell of mold or whiskey, and for the first time in years, she cried. Not the silent tears she had trained herself to shed. Real crying, ugly and loud and raw. She cried until her throat burned, until her eyes swelled shut, until there was nothing left. Then she slept. She dreamed of torn paper falling like snow. She dreamed of a man who did not look back. She dreamed of a door she could open or close entirely on her own. When dawn came, Clara Weston was standing outside the boarding house with nothing but the clothes on her back and a choice that was finally hers. Jesse Calhoun rode up exactly as the sun cleared the horizon. He looked at her standing there and did not seem surprised. "You sure?" Clara squared her shoulders. Her wrists still bore the marks of the rope. "No," she said honestly, "but I'm going anyway." Jesse nodded. He extended his hand to help her onto the horse behind him. Clara hesitated only a moment. Then she took it. The ride lasted 3 hours. Clara kept her hands at her sides, gripping the saddle instead of Jesse's waist. He did not comment on it. He did not try to make conversation. He simply rode steady and unhurried while the town disappeared behind them. Clara's body ached from the auction. Her cheek still throbbed where Horace had struck her. But with every mile between her and Copper Creek, something loosened in her chest. Something she had been holding for 23 years. When Jesse finally stopped the horse, Clara looked around. A small cabin stood in a valley with a creek running nearby. A half-built barn. A corral with 6 cattle. Nothing grand, nothing impressive. But no Horace. No Edna. No Virgil Sloane. That was enough. Jesse dismounted and offered his hand to help her down. Clara ignored it and swung off the horse herself. Her legs nearly buckled when they hit the ground, but she caught herself. Jesse noticed. He did not mention it. "Cabin's got 2 rooms," he said. "You take the one in back. I'll sleep in the front by the fire." "Where did you sleep before?" "Back room." Clara frowned. "I'm not taking your bed." "You ain't taking nothing. I'm giving it. There's a difference." He led the horse toward the corral without waiting for her response. Clara stood in the dirt, unsure what to do with herself. In Horace's house there had always been orders, always been tasks, always been someone telling her where to go and what to do. Here there was only silence and open sky. Jesse came back carrying a bucket. "You hungry?" "I can cook." "Didn't ask if you could cook, asked if you were hungry." Clara's jaw tightened. "I pull my weight. That was the deal." "Deal was fair wages for fair work. Ain't no work tonight. Tonight you rest." He walked into the cabin. After a moment, Clara followed. Inside was simple. A table, 2 chairs, a stove, shelves lined with jars and tins. Everything clean, everything in its place. The back room held a narrow bed with a wool blanket and a small window facing east. Jesse set the bucket by the stove and started a fire. Clara watched him work. His movements were efficient. No wasted motion, no fumbling. "Sit down before you fall down," he said without looking at her. Clara sat. Her body thanked her immediately. She had not realized how much energy it took to stay upright when every muscle screamed for rest. Jesse cooked. Beans, salt pork, coffee. He placed a plate in front of her and sat across the table with his own. They ate in silence. Clara kept waiting for it. The look, the comment, the hand reaching across the table. It never came. Jesse ate his food, drank his coffee, and washed the dishes without once making her feel like she owed him something. When he finished, he nodded toward the back room. "Get some sleep. Morning comes early out here." "What time?" "Dawn. We'll start with the cattle. I'll show you how things work." Clara stood. She walked to the back room door. She stopped. "Mr. Calhoun?" "Jesse." "Jesse." The name felt strange in her mouth. "Thank you. For today." He looked at her for a long moment. His eyes held something she could not name. Not pity, not expectation. Something quieter. "Don't thank me yet. Ranch work ain't easy. You might hate me by next week." Clara almost smiled. Almost. "I've hated plenty of people in my life. You ain't even close." She went into the room and closed the door. For the first time in her memory, she locked a door from the inside instead of having it locked from the outside. She lay down on a bed that smelled of cedar and clean wool. She did not cry. She was too tired for tears. But something in her chest felt different. Lighter. Like a fist that had been clenched for years was slowly finally beginning to open. Morning came with birdsong and pale light. Clara woke disoriented, her heart pounding before she remembered where she was. Not Horace's house. Not the auction block. The ranch. Jesse Calhoun's ranch. She dressed quickly and opened the door. Jesse was already at the stove, coffee brewing. He glanced at her and nodded. Boots by the door. They were my brother's. Should fit close enough. Clara looked at the worn leather boots sitting neatly by the entrance. She put them on. They were slightly too big, but sturdy. Your brother, she said carefully. You mentioned him yesterday. At the auction. Jesse's hand paused over the coffee pot. Just for a second. Then he resumed pouring. Thomas. He was 2 years younger than me. Died on a cattle drive in '80. I'm sorry. So am I. He handed her a cup. Every damn day. They drank their coffee standing up. Jesse did not elaborate. Clara did not push. She understood about grief that did not want to be prodded. Outside, the morning air was already warm. Summer in Arizona did not believe in gentle starts. Jesse led her to the corral, where 6 cattle stood chewing lazily. You know anything about cattle? I know they're big and they smell. Jesse's mouth twitched. It was not quite a smile, but close. That's a start. These 6 are what's left of my herd after I paid for you yesterday. Come fall, I'll need to sell at least 4 to get through winter. That means keeping them healthy and fed until then. What do you need me to do? Today, watch, learn, ask questions if you got them. He opened the corral gate. First lesson. Never stand directly behind a cow. They kick backward when they're spooked. Seen men lose teeth that way. Clara filed that information away. She spent the morning following Jesse as he moved through the ranch. He showed her how to check the cattle for sickness, how to mend a fence post that had rotted through, how to draw water from the creek without muddying it. He explained everything once clearly without condescension. When she made mistakes, he corrected them without anger. When she did something right, he nodded once and moved on. By midday, Clara's arms ached and her back screamed. Sweat soaked through her dress. Her hands were raw from handling rough wood and rope. She had never felt more awake in her life. They ate lunch in the shade of the half-built barn. Bread and cheese. Water from the creek. Jesse ate with the same quiet efficiency he did everything else. You're a fast learner, he said. Had to be. Horace didn't like explaining things twice. Jesse's jaw tightened at the name. He ever hit you before yesterday, I mean? Clara looked at her raw hands. When I deserved it, according to him. Nobody deserves it. I know that now. Jesse set down his bread. He looked at her with an intensity that made her want to look away. She didn't. Clara, I ain't going to pretend I understand everything you've been through, but I want you to know something. On this ranch, you don't have to earn the right to exist. You don't have to be useful to be safe. You're here because I offered and you chose. That's it. That's all. Clara's throat tightened. She did not trust herself to speak. You understand, Jesse pressed. She nodded. Good. He stood and brushed off his pants. Now let's get back to work. That fence ain't going to mend itself. The days fell into rhythm. Wake at dawn. Coffee. Cattle. Fences. Meals. Sleep. Repeat. Clara's body adapted. Her muscles hardened. Her hands calloused over. She learned to anticipate which posts needed reinforcement, which cattle were prone to wandering, which section of creek ran clearest. Jesse taught her to rope on the 5th day. She was terrible at it. The lasso fell short every time, landing in the dust like a dead snake. Again, Jesse said. She threw again. Missed again. Again. Missed. Again! This is pointless. Clara hurled the rope to the ground. I can't do it. Can't or won't? Can't. I just told you. Jesse picked up the rope and handed it back to her. His face was patient but firm. You got sold on an auction block 3 days ago. You didn't quit then. You spit in a man's face and took the consequences. Now you're going to give up on a rope. Clara snatched the lasso from his hand. Her blood ran hot with frustration and something else. Something that felt dangerously close to shame. She threw again. The loop wobbled through the air and caught the fence post by half an inch. Jesse nodded once. Better. Again. By the 8th day, Clara could rope a stationary post 8 times out of 10. By the 12th, she could rope a slow-moving target. Jesse never praised her excessively. He never made a fuss. He simply moved her to the next skill, trusting that she would keep up. She did. On the 14th night, they sat by the fire after supper. Jesse carved a piece of wood, his knife moving in slow, precise strokes. Clara watched his hands. They never seemed to hurry, yet they accomplished everything they needed to. "What are you making?" "Nothing yet. Just seeing what the wood wants to be." "Wood doesn't want anything. It's wood." Jesse almost smiled. That's one way to look at it. Clara pulled her knees to her chest. The fire crackled between them, warm against the cooling night air. "Can I ask you something?" "You can ask. Might not answer." "The stampede. The one that killed your brother. What happened?" Jesse's knife stopped moving. He stared into the fire for a long moment. Clara thought he would refuse to speak. Then he took a breath and began. "We were driving 100 head from San Antonio to Abilene. Good money in it. Thomas was 19. First big drive. He was so damn excited." Jesse's voice caught. He cleared his throat and continued. "Third night out, lightning storm rolled in. Spooked the herd. They ran blind." Clara waited. "I was on the east flank. Thomas was riding drag. When the cattle turned, he was right in their path. I tried to get to him. Rode hard as I could. Wasn't fast enough." Jesse closed his eyes. "Found him after. Barely recognized him." "Jesse, I should have put him on the east flank with me. Should have made him stay home. Should have done 100 things different." His voice cracked. "But I didn't. And he's dead. And I wake up every morning with that." Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Not for herself this time. For this man who carried his brother's death like a stone around his neck. "It wasn't your fault?" "Doesn't matter. He's still gone." They sat in silence. The fire burned lower. Jesse resumed his carving, though his hands were not as steady as before. "My mother used to read to me," Clara said quietly. "When I was small. Before my father died. Poetry mostly. She had this book with a blue cover. I don't remember the words anymore, but I remember her voice." Jesse looked up. "After she married Horace, she changed. Stopped reading. Stopped talking to me much at all. One day, I asked her to read again, and she burned the book in the stove. Said reading was useless for a girl like me. Said I should learn to work instead of filling my head with nonsense." "That why you can't read?" Clara's cheeks flushed. "Who said, I can't read? You look at everything on the supply list like it's written in a foreign language, and you hold papers upside down sometimes. Don't take much to figure it out." Clara wanted to deny it, wanted to lie, but she was so tired of lying. "I knew my letters once. I forgot them. Horace said reading made women uppity. My mother agreed. After a while I just stopped trying to remember." Jesse set down his carving. He went to a shelf in the corner and pulled down a battered book. He brought it back to the fire and sat beside her. This was Thomas's. He loved reading. Adventure stories mostly. He used to read to me at night on cattle drives. Made the time go faster. He opened the book to the first page. "We can start here, if you want." Clara stared at the page. The letters swam in her vision. Fear and shame warred in her chest. What if she couldn't learn? What if Horace was right about her? "I'm too old." "You're 23. "I'll be slow." "I got time." Clara looked at Jesse. His face held no judgment, no impatience, just steady, quiet certainty. She pointed to the first word. "What's that one?" "The." "The. Most common word in English. You'll see it everywhere." Clara traced the letters with her finger. "The." "The," she repeated. "Good. Next one." They went through the first page, word by word. Clara stumbled. Made mistakes. Mixed up letters. Jesse corrected her gently, never sighing, never showing frustration. By the time the fire burned to embers, she could read the first sentence on her own. "The sun rose over the mountains." Her voice shook as she said it. 5 words. 5 simple words. But they were hers now. She had taken them back. Jessie closed the book. Same time tomorrow. Clara nodded. She did not trust her voice. That night she lay in bed and traced letters in the air with her finger. Thesun. The sun. The sun rose. She fell asleep with words dancing behind her eyelids, and something warm growing in her chest that she was afraid to name. Weeks passed. Clara's reading improved slowly but steadily. She graduated from single sentences to full paragraphs. Jessie was patient in ways she did not know a person could be. He never rushed her, never made her feel stupid. When she got frustrated and threw the book across the room one night, he simply picked it up, dusted it off, and handed it back. Again, he said. It became their word, their private language. Again. Try again. You failed, but that's okay. Again. Her ranch work improved too. She could mend fences faster than Jessie now. She could identify sick cattle by their gait before symptoms became visible. She rose at dawn without needing to be woken and fell asleep at night with the bone-deep satisfaction of honest work. Her body changed. Her arms grew stronger. Her shoulders straightened. She caught her reflection in the creek one morning and barely recognized the woman staring back. There was color in her cheeks, calluses on her palms, something alive in her eyes that had not been there before. One evening, Jessie came in from the barn, looking troubled. Clara was at the stove stirring a pot of stew. She had learned to cook things Jessie actually wanted to eat instead of the plain fare Horace had demanded. "What's wrong?" Jessie sat heavily at the table. "Saw riders on the ridge today, 3 of them, watching the ranch." Clara's blood went cold. "Did you recognize them?" "Too far to tell, but they weren't just passing through. They sat there for an hour before moving on." Her hands trembled on the spoon. "You think it's Horace?" "Don't know. Could be anyone. Could be nothing." Jessie's jaw was tight. "But I want you to keep the rifle loaded while I'm out with the cattle. You know how to shoot." "No." "Then we'll add that to your lessons." The next morning, Jessie taught her to handle the Winchester rifle, how to load it, how to aim, how to brace for the kick. She was terrible at first, just like the roping. But Jessie was patient, and Clara was determined. By the end of the week, she could hit a target at 50 yards. Not perfectly, but enough. "Enough to make someone think twice before coming closer," Jessie said. "That's all you need." Clara practiced every morning before breakfast. The rifle became familiar in her hands, the weight of it, the smell of gunpowder. She had never held power like this before, the power to defend herself, to protect what mattered. It changed something in her, something fundamental. 3 weeks later, the riders came back. This time they came all the way down to the ranch. Clara was alone. Jessie had taken 2 cattle to town for sale, a trip that would keep him gone until nightfall. She was hanging laundry when she heard hoofbeats. 3 men rode into the yard. She recognized the one in front immediately. Vernon, her mother's husband, the man who had sold her. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. Her hands went numb. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to become small and invisible, the way she had for 23 years. Instead, she walked calmly to the cabin door. The rifle stood just inside, loaded and ready. Vernon dismounted with the lazy confidence of a man who expected no resistance. The 2 men behind him stayed on their horses. Hired muscle. Nobody she recognized. "Well now," Vernon said, looking around. "Ain't this cozy? Playing house with your cowboy." Clara said nothing. Her hand rested on the doorframe inches from the rifle. "Your mama's worried sick about you, Clara, crying herself to sleep every night." Vernon's smile was oil and rot. "She wants you to come home." "I don't have a home there. I never did." "Now that ain't true. We raised you, fed you, gave you a roof over your head. And this is how you repay us, running off with some stranger living in sin." Clara felt the old fear rise in her throat. The voice that said she deserved this, that she was wrong, that she should apologize and submit and make herself small. She swallowed it down. "You sold me to a saloon owner, Vernon. Mama signed the paper. You don't get to pretend that was love. Vernon's smile faded. His eyes went hard. Now listen here, girl. I got a man-in-town lawyer type says that sale wasn't legal. Says you're still our property by law until you turn 25 or get married proper. We got rights. That paper was torn up. Papers can be rewritten. Vernon stepped closer. Now you can come peaceful, or these boys can help you understand the situation. Your choice. Clara reached inside the door and lifted the Winchester. She brought it up smooth and steady, the way Jessie had taught her. The barrel pointed at Vernon's chest. Here's my choice. Vernon froze. The two men behind him shifted nervously. You crazy bitch! You ain't got the guts to... Clara pulled back the hammer. The click echoed across the yard. Horace used to say I was too scared to fight back. Virgil Sloane thought the same thing. Her voice was steady. Her hands did not shake. They were wrong. You want to find out how wrong? Take one more step. Vernon's face went pale. He looked at the rifle. At Clara's eyes. At the distance between them. This ain't over, he said finally. Yes, it is. Get off this land. Don't come back. Vernon backed toward his horse. He mounted up slowly, never taking his eyes off the rifle. You'll regret this, Clara. Mark my words. Your mama... My mama sold me for gambling money. I don't have a mama anymore. Vernon spat in the dirt. He wheeled his horse around and rode out his men following close behind. Clara stood in the doorway until they disappeared over the ridge. Then her legs gave out. She sank to the ground, the rifle clutched against her chest and shook with sobs that would not stop. That was how Jessie found her when he returned at dusk. Sitting in the dirt, tear-stained and trembling, but alive. Unbroken. He knelt beside her without a word. He did not touch her. He simply waited. Vernon came, Clara managed. 3 of them. He said they had legal rights to take me back. Jessie's face went hard as stone. Did they hurt you? No, I wouldn't let them. She lifted the rifle. Jessie looked at it, then at her. You ran them off alone. Told you I was a fast learner. Jessie let out a breath. It sounded almost like a laugh. Then he did something he had never done before. He reached out and took her hand. His palm was rough and warm. His grip was gentle. Clara Weston, you are the bravest woman I have ever known. Clara looked at their joined hands. At his face open and honest in the fading light. At the ranch that had become her home. At the life she was building with her own 2 hands. She squeezed his fingers once. Teach me to be braver. Jessie helped her to her feet. They walked into the cabin together side by side. The night was quiet. The fire crackled low, and somewhere in the darkness, Clara Weston began to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was worth fighting for. The days after Vernon's visit passed in uneasy quiet. Clara worked harder than ever, throwing herself into ranch tasks until her muscles screamed and her mind had no room for fear. Jessie doubled the patrols riding the property line at dawn and dusk, watching for riders on the ridge. They found signs twice. Fresh hoof prints near the creek. A cigarette butt ground into the dirt by the fence line. Someone was watching, waiting. On the 7th night, Clara could not sleep. She sat by the window in her room, the rifle across her lap, watching shadows move in the moonlight. A soft knock came at her door. You awake? Jessie's voice. Yeah. Can I come in? Clara hesitated. In 6 weeks on this ranch, Jessie had never once entered her room. He had respected that boundary absolutely. Doors open. Jessie stepped inside. He looked tired. There were dark circles under his eyes that had not been there a month ago. You should sleep, Clara said. So should you. Neither of them moved. Jessie sat on the floor with his back against the wall, keeping distance between them. Clara appreciated that more than she could say. They're coming back, she said. It was not a question. Probably. With the sheriff this time? Maybe. Clara gripped the rifle tighter. What happens then? If they have legal papers, if the law says I belong to them. Jesse was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was low and fierce. The law can say whatever it wants. You ain't property. You ain't going back to that house. I don't care if the president himself rides up here with papers. You're staying right where you are. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. You'd fight the law for me? I'd fight anyone for you. The words hung in the air between them. Heavy. Charged. Clara's heart beat faster. Why? She whispered. Jesse looked at her. In the moonlight, his eyes were dark pools. You know why? Clara did know. She had known for weeks, maybe longer. The way he looked at her when he thought she was not watching. The way his hand lingered when he passed her tools. The way he said her name like it was something precious. She knew, and it terrified her. Jesse, I ain't asking for nothing. His voice was gentle. I'm just telling you the truth. You asked why I'd fight for you. That's why. Because somewhere in the last 6 weeks you became the only thing in my life worth fighting for. Clara's throat closed. No one had ever said anything like that to her. No one had ever looked at her the way Jesse was looking at her now. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I don't know how to be wanted without owing something. You don't owe me anything. You never did. You never will. Then what do you want from me? Jesse stood slowly. He crossed the room and knelt in front of her chair. He did not touch her. He simply looked up at her with those steady brown eyes. I want you to be happy. That's it. That's everything. If being happy means staying here, stay. If it means leaving, I'll help you pack. If it means never speaking to me again, I'll respect that too. Your happiness, Clara. That's all I want. A tear slid down her cheek. She did not wipe it away. What if being happy means staying with you? Jesse's breath caught. For a moment, he looked like a man who had been wandering in the desert and just found water. Then stay. For as long as you want. Forever if you'll have me. Clara reached out and touched his face. Her fingers trembled against his cheek. He closed his eyes and leaned into her palm like a man starving for contact. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. I've never chosen anyone before. Never had anyone choose me. I know that too. What if I'm broken? What if I don't know how to love, right? Jesse opened his eyes. He took her hand and pressed it to his chest over his heart. Feel that it's beating. Same as yours. We're both broken, Clara. Both of us got pieces missing, but maybe broken people can build something together that whole people can't. Maybe the cracks are what let the light in. Clara leaned forward. Her forehead touched his. They breathed the same air, shared the same space, existed in the same moment. I want to try, she said. Then we try. Together. No rush, no pressure. Just together. She kissed him then, soft and tentative like a question. He answered with a gentleness that made her chest ache. When they broke apart, he was smiling. The first real smile she had seen on his face. Together, she repeated. Together. They sat that way until dawn began to break. Not touching anymore, but close. Talking about nothing and everything. Fears and hopes and small foolish dreams. When the sun rose, they walked outside to start the day's work, side by side. Something had shifted between them. Something neither could name, but both could feel. They did not notice the dust cloud on the horizon until it was too late. 5 riders came down from the ridge. Clara's stomach dropped when she recognized them. Vernon rode in front. Beside him sat Horace, his thin face twisted in triumph. Behind them came 2 men she did not know, hard-faced and armed. And in the center, wearing a badge that caught the morning light, rode Sheriff Tom Hadley. Jesse stepped in front of Clara. His hand rested on his pistol. That's far enough. The riders stopped 20 feet from the cabin. Sheriff Hadley raised his hands in a gesture of peace. Easy now, Calhoun. We ain't here for trouble. Then why'd you bring armed men to my property? Hadley sighed. He looked tired, like a man doing a job he hated. Got papers here, Jesse. Legal documents from a judge in Copper Creek. Says Clara Weston is still under guardianship of her mother Edna Pruitt until age 25 or legal marriage. He pulled a folded document from his coat. I'm here to enforce the law, that's all. Clara felt ice spread through her veins. That's not possible. The sale was nullified. Jesse paid. The sale was for services. Vernon cut in, smiling. Your cowboy bought you out of working at the saloon. He didn't buy you out of family obligation. Different thing entirely. Judge Morrison agreed. Judge Morrison owes Virgil Sloan $300 in gambling debts, Jesse said coldly. You think I don't know how law works in Copper Creek? Sheriff Hadley shifted uncomfortably. That's a serious accusation, Jesse. It's a serious corruption. And you know it, Tom. You've known it for years. Hadley's jaw tightened. He did not deny it. Clara stepped out from behind Jesse. Her heart pounded, but her voice was steady. Sheriff Hadley, look at me. Hadley met her eyes reluctantly. 2 months ago, my mother signed a paper selling me to a man who runs a whorehouse. She watched them tie my hands. She said nothing while they dragged me onto an auction block like cattle. Now she claims I belong to her. Now she wants me back. Clara. I'm not finished. Clara's voice rose. Vernon Pruitt beat me for 17 years, broke my wrist when I was 14 for dropping a plate, locked me in a root cellar for 3 days when I was 16 for talking back. My mother watched all of it. She never said a word. Not one word. The sheriff looked away. Even the hired men shifted uncomfortably. That paper you're holding says I belong to them, but I'm asking you, man to man. Do you believe that? Do you believe a person can own another person in 1882? Hadley was silent for a long moment. Clara saw something flicker in his eyes. Doubt. Shame. The knowledge that he was on the wrong side of something that mattered. Then Horace laughed. Ain't that precious? The little bitch learned to make speeches. He swung down from his horse. Enough talking. You got your papers, Sheriff. Do your job. He walked toward Clara. Jesse moved to block him, but Horace shoved past. Don't touch her, Jesse warned. Or what you'll shoot a man for collecting his property in front of a sheriff. Horace grabbed Clara's arm. Come on, girl, time to go home. Clara did not think. 23 years of fear and rage and swallowed pain exploded in a single moment. She drove her knee into Horace's groin with every ounce of strength she had. He crumpled to the ground, gasping. His face went purple. Vernon lunged off his horse with a roar. Jesse intercepted him, catching a wild punch and returning one that snapped Vernon's head back. The 2 hired men dismounted, reaching for their guns. Hold it. Sheriff Hadley's pistol was out, pointed at the sky. He fired once. The shot echoed across the valley. Everybody stop! The hired men froze. Jesse and Vernon separated, both breathing hard. Horace writhed in the dirt, still clutching himself. Clara stood over him, fists clenched, shaking with adrenaline. I said don't touch me! Hadley dismounted slowly. He looked at the scene before him. At Horace in the dirt. At Vernon's bleeding lip. At Clara standing tall for the first time in her life. This ain't right, he said quietly. None of this is right. Then do something about it, Jesse said. You're the law, Tom. Be the law. Hadley looked at the papers in his hand. He looked at Clara. He looked at the men who had paid to have him ride out here. Then he tore the papers in half. Sheriff? Vernon shouted. What the hell do you think you're... I think I'm done. Hadley's voice was firm. I've looked the other way for 10 years in this county. Let men like Sloan and Morrison run roughshod over decent folks because it was easier than fighting. Well, it ain't easier no more. Not when I got to look a woman in the eye and tell her she belongs to people who sold her like livestock. He threw the torn papers to the ground. Clara Weston is a free woman. Anyone who says different can take it up with me. Vernon's face contorted with rage. You can't do this. The judge can go to hell, and so can you. Hadley holstered his pistol. He looked at his hired men. You boys want to get paid for this job, you ride back to town and tell Sloan it's over. You want to stay and cause trouble, you'll answer to me and Calhoun both. Your choice. The hired men exchanged glances. Without a word, they mounted their horses and rode away. Vernon hauled Horace to his feet. The older man could barely stand. "This ain't over," Vernon snarled. "Not by a long shot. You think Virgil Sloane is just going to forget about this? You think—" "Get off my land," Jesse said quietly. "Now, before I do something that gives the sheriff actual work." Vernon glared at him with pure hatred. Then he dragged Horace toward their horses and mounted up. "You'll regret this," he called over his shoulder. "Both of you, mark my words." They rode away in a cloud of dust. Clara watched until they disappeared over the ridge. Her knees gave out. Jesse caught her before she hit the ground. "Easy, I got you." "I hit him." Clara's voice was shaking. "I hit Horace. I actually hit him." "You did more than hit him. You broke something he can't fix. His hold on you. That's gone now." Sheriff Hadley approached hat in his hands. "Miss Weston, I owe you an apology. For today and for hell for everything. I should have done something years ago. Everyone knew what was happening in that house. We just didn't want to see it." Clara looked at him. She should have felt anger, hatred, all the things he deserved for his years of willful blindness. Instead, she felt empty, tired, done with carrying rage for people who did not deserve the weight. "You did something today," she said finally. "That's what matters." Hadley nodded slowly. He looked at Jesse. "You'll need to watch your back. Sloane don't take losses well. Neither does Judge Morrison." "I've been watching my back since I was born. Ain't nothing new. I'll do what I can from town, but there's limits to what one honest man can manage in Copper Creek." "We'll manage." Jesse extended his hand. "Thank you, Tom, for choosing right when it mattered." Hadley shook it. "Should have chosen right a long time ago. Better late than never, I reckon." He mounted his horse and rode toward town. Clara and Jesse watched him go. When they were alone, Clara turned and buried her face in Jesse's chest. He held her tight, one hand in her hair, the other pressed against her back. "It's over," she whispered. "It's really over. The papers are over, but Vernon was right about one thing. Sloane won't let this go easy." "I don't care." Clara looked up at him. "Whatever comes, we face it together. You said that, remember." Jesse brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I remember." "Then stop worrying about what might happen and help me cook supper. I'm starving." Jesse laughed. It was a good sound. A sound Clara wanted to hear every day for the rest of her life. They walked into the cabin together. The torn papers blew across the yard, forgotten, meaningless. Just scraps in the wind. That night, Clara slept without nightmares for the first time since she was a child. She did not know it yet, but the hardest test was still to come. 3 days later, Jesse rode out at dawn to check on the cattle in the far pasture. He had been tense since Vernon's visit, watching the horizon's sleeping light. Clara told him to stop worrying so much. He told her to keep the rifle close. She spent the morning reading aloud from Thomas's book. She could manage full pages now, slowly but surely. The words no longer looked like enemies. They looked like friends she had not met yet. By noon, Jesse had not returned. Clara told herself not to worry. The far pasture was hours away. He had probably found a fence that needed mending. By late afternoon, the first fingers of fear crept into her chest. She was saddling the horse when she heard hoofbeats. Her hand went to the rifle immediately. But it was not Vernon. It was not Sloane's men. It was Jesse's horse galloping into the yard alone. No rider. Clara's blood turned to ice. The horse was breathing hard foam at its mouth, eyes rolling with fear. There was blood on the saddle. "No!" Clara grabbed the reins. "No, no, no!" She mounted without thinking. She kicked the horse into a gallop and rode toward the far pasture, following tracks in the dirt, praying with every hoofbeat. Please be alive. Please be alive. Please. She found him a mile from the ranch. He was lying in a gully half hidden by scrub brush. His shirt was soaked with blood. Clara threw herself off the horse and ran to him. He was breathing, barely. His eyes were closed. There was a deep gash across his ribs and his leg was twisted at a wrong angle. "Jesse! Jesse, can you hear me?" His eyes fluttered open, focused on her face. "Clara." His voice was a rasp. "Sloane's men, 4 of them. Ambush." "Don't talk. Save your strength." "Fought them off, but one got me good." He coughed. Blood flecked his lips. "Think the horse threw me after. Legs busted." Clara looked at the wound on his ribs. It was deep but clean. Not a bullet wound. A knife. She could work with that. "I need to get you back to the cabin. Can you stand if I help you?" "Don't know." "We're going to find out." She hauled him upright. He cried out in pain, but did not pass out. Good. That was good. "Put your arm around me. Lean on my shoulder." "I'll crush you." "Try me." He put his arm around her. She took his weight. Her knees buckled but held. Together, step by agonizing step, they made their way to the horse. Getting him mounted was the hardest thing Clara had ever done. Jessie was barely conscious, dead weight against her body. She pushed and pulled and screamed encouragement until finally he was in the saddle. She climbed up behind him and held him steady. The ride back to the ranch took an eternity. When she got him inside and onto the bed, she finally let herself look at the wound properly. It was bad, but not fatal. Not if she acted fast. She boiled water. She found clean cloth. She remembered everything she had ever seen Horace do to injured cattle, and did the opposite, because Horace had been wrong about everything. She cleaned the wound. She stitched it closed with a sewing needle and thread her hands steady, even as her heart raced. She splinted his leg with boards from the woodpile. She gave him water small sips and wiped the sweat from his brow. Jesse drifted in and out of consciousness. When he was awake, he tried to apologize. "Should have been more careful. Should have—" "Shut up." "Clara?" "I said shut up. Save your strength for healing." He almost smiled. "Bossy." "Damn right." She sat beside him all night. When his fever spiked, she cooled him with wet cloths. When he shook with chills, she piled blankets on top of him. When he cried out in his sleep calling for Thomas, she held his hand and told him he was not alone. By morning, the fever broke. Jesse opened his eyes. They were clear for the first time in hours. He looked at Clara, at her exhausted face, at her blood-stained hands. "You saved my life. You saved mine first. We're even." He reached up and touched her cheek. "You're stronger than anyone I've ever known. Stronger than me. Stronger than this whole damn territory." Clara caught his hand and held it. "Then stop trying to die on me. I've got plans for you, Jesse Calhoun." "Yeah. What kind of plans?" "The kind that require you breathing." He laughed weakly. It turned into a cough, but his eyes stayed bright. "I ain't going anywhere. Not now, not ever." Clara leaned down and kissed his forehead. "Good. Because I'm not done learning to read yet. And you promised to teach me." Jesse closed his eyes, still smiling. "Best reason to live I ever heard." Clara sat with him until he fell into a healing sleep. Then she walked outside, looked at the empty yard, and made a decision. Sloane had sent 4 men to kill Jesse. 4 men, and he had fought them off alone. But they would come back. They would keep coming until someone was dead. She needed help. Real help. The kind that came with badges and authority and the power to stop men like Virgil Sloane. She saddled the horse. She checked the rifle. She looked back at the cabin one more time. "I'll be back," she whispered. "I promise." Then she rode toward Copper Creek, toward the fight that had been waiting for her since the day she was born. Clara rode hard into Copper Creek with dust in her throat and fire in her chest. The town looked the same as the day she had been sold on its streets. Same wooden buildings. Same faces turning to stare. Same whispers following her like shadows. She did not care about whispers anymore. She tied the horse outside the sheriff's office and pushed through the door without knocking. Tom Hadley looked up from his desk, startled. His hand went to his pistol, then dropped when he saw who it was. "Miss Weston, what happened?" "Sloane's men ambushed Jesse. 4 of them. He fought them off, but he's hurt bad. Knife wound to the ribs. Broken leg. Hadley stood so fast his chair fell backward. Is he alive? For now. But they'll come back. You know they will. Damn. Hadley grabbed his hat. I'll ride out there. No. Clara's voice was sharp. I don't need you at the ranch. I need you here. I need you to end this. Hadley stopped. He looked at her with something like respect. What do you have in mind? Sloan thinks he owns this town. He thinks money and fear give him power over everyone. I want to prove him wrong. How? Clara pulled a folded paper from her pocket. She had found it in Jesse's things that morning, tucked inside Thomas's book. A deed. Legal ownership of the ranch signed and witnessed. Jesse owns his land outright. No debts, no liens. Sloan can't touch him through the bank or the courts. The only way he can take what Jesse has is through violence. Hadley took the deed and examined it. This is real. It's real, and I want you to file a formal complaint. Attempted murder. 4 witnesses on Sloan's payroll attacked a landowner on his own property. That's not debt collection. That's not business. That's a hanging offense. You want me to arrest Virgil Sloan? I want you to do your job. For once. Hadley flinched. He deserved it, and they both knew it. Miss Weston Sloan has half the town in his pocket. The judge, the bank manager, half the business owners. If I move against him, then you'll be doing the right thing. Isn't that what you said? Better late than never. Hadley was silent for a long moment. Clara watched him wrestle with fear and conscience and years of looking the other way. I'll need help, he said finally. Can't take Sloan alone. He's got too many men. Then find men who are tired of being afraid. There have to be some in this town. There might be. Hadley grabbed a ring of keys from his desk. Come with me. They walked down the main street together. Heads turned. Conversation stopped. Clara felt the weight of every stare, but did not slow down. Hadley led her to Martha Delgado's store. The older woman looked up from her counter with wide eyes. Sheriff Clara. What's wrong? Jesse Calhoun was attacked by Sloan's men, Hadley said. We're putting together a posse. I need your help spreading the word. Martha's face hardened. It's about time someone stood up to that snake. What do you need? Names. Men who can be trusted. Men who are sick of living under Sloan's boot. I know a few. Martha came around the counter. My husband's brother, the Miller boys. Old Frank Denton. He's hated Sloan since the man cheated him out of his mining claim 3 years back. Get them. Tell them to meet at the jail in an hour, armed. Martha nodded and hurried out the back door. Hadley turned to Clara. You should stay here. It's safer. No. Miss Weston. I said no. Jesse nearly died because of me. I'm not hiding while other people fight my battles. This isn't your battle. The hell it isn't. Clara's eyes blazed. Every woman Sloan has bought and sold. Every man he's cheated. Every family he's broken. This is all our battles. And I'm done running from it. Hadley studied her face. Whatever he saw there made him nod slowly. Then stay close. And keep that rifle ready. They waited at the jail. One by one men arrived. Some Clara recognized from the auction crowd. Others were strangers. But they all had the same look in their eyes. Fear mixed with anger, mixed with something that might have been hope. By the time the hour was up, 12 men stood in the sheriff's office. Not many, but enough. Hadley addressed them simply. Virgil Sloan has run this town for too long. He's bought judges, bribed officials, hurt people who couldn't fight back. Yesterday, his men tried to kill Jesse Calhoun on his own land. I'm done pretending that's acceptable. Anyone who stands with me today stands against Sloan. That means risk. That means danger. Anyone who wants to walk away, do it now. No shame in it. No one moved. All right then. Hadley checked his pistol. Let's go pay Mr. Sloan a visit. They walked to the Dusty Rose in a group. Clara stayed near the back with Martha, who had insisted on coming despite Hadley's protests. "Stubborn woman," he had muttered. "Learned from the best," Martha had replied. The saloon's doors swung open before they reached them. Virgil Sloane stepped onto the porch, flanked by 6 armed men. His silver rings glinted in the afternoon light. "Well now," he said smoothly, "this is quite the welcoming committee. Sheriff Hadley, I'm touched." "Virgil Sloane, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder." Sloane laughed. "Murder? I don't know what you're talking about." 4 of your men attacked Jesse Calhoun yesterday. Stabbed him. Left him for dead. We have witnesses." "Witnesses?" Sloane's smile widened. "I have witnesses too, Sheriff. Witnesses who will swear my men were playing cards in my saloon all day yesterday. Witnesses who will swear Jesse Calhoun is a violent drunk who probably fell off his horse. Your bought witnesses won't help you this time." "Really? And who's going to stop them? You—" Sloane looked at the ragtag group behind Hadley. "A dozen farmers and shopkeepers against my men." Clara stepped forward. Her hands were steady on the rifle. "Against all of us." Sloane's eyes found her. His smile turned cruel. "The Weston girl. I should have known you were behind this, causing trouble everywhere you go. Your mother was right about you. My mother sold me to a whorehouse. Her opinion doesn't matter much." Brave words, but words won't save you when this is over. Maybe not. But a rope around your neck will save everyone else. The silence stretched tight as a bowstring. Sloane's men shifted nervously. So did Hadley's. The next moment would decide everything. Then a new voice cut through the tension. "I'd listen to the lady if I were you, Virgil." Everyone turned. A man walked toward them from the direction of the bank. Middle-aged, well-dressed. Clara did not recognize him, but Sloane clearly did. His face went pale. "Mr. Crawford, what are you doing here?" "Getting my money out of your saloon before it's seized as evidence." Crawford stopped beside Hadley. "I've been sending reports to the territorial governor for 6 months about your business practices, about Judge Morrison's debts, about every dirty deal you've made in this county." Sloane's composure cracked. "You're lying. I'm a federal marshal, Virgil. Lying is beneath my pay grade." Crawford pulled back his coat to reveal a badge. "You're done. The governor's men are a day's ride behind me. They're bringing warrants for you, Morrison, and anyone else involved in your little empire." Clara's heart soared. Sloane's face contorted with rage. "You can't do this. I built this town. I own this town." "You owned it," Crawford said. "Past tense. Now you're just another criminal waiting for trial." Sloane's hand moved toward his pistol. Before he could touch it, 3 rifles trained on his chest. His men saw which way the wind was blowing and raised their hands. "Smart choice," Hadley said. He stepped forward with handcuffs. "Virgil Sloane, you're under arrest. You have the right to remain silent. I suggest you use it." As Hadley clamped the iron around Sloane's wrists, the man looked at Clara with pure hatred. "This isn't over." Clara met his gaze without flinching. "Yes, it is." The crowd that had gathered to watch began to murmur. Then someone cheered, then another. Within moments, the street rang with voices celebrating the end of something they had endured for far too long. Martha hugged Clara tight. "You did it, child. You actually did it. We all did it." "No." Martha pulled back and held Clara's face in her hands. "This started because you refused to stay silent. You refused to be property. Don't you ever forget that." Clara's eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. "Not here. Not now. I need to get back to Jesse. Go. I'll make sure things are handled here." Clara pushed through the crowd toward her horse. She was almost there when Marshal Crawford caught up with her. "Miss Weston, a moment." She stopped. "Yes, I've been watching this situation for months, waiting for the right time to move. When Sheriff Hadley sent word this morning that he was ready to make a stand, I knew the moment had come." Crawford smiled. "But I want you to know, none of this would have happened without you. I didn't do anything special. I just refused to die quietly. That's exactly what's special about it." Crawford reached into his coat and pulled out an envelope. This is from the Territorial Office. They're looking for people to help administer the new settlements in the Northern Territory. Schools, land offices, community organizations. The pay is good. The work is meaningful. Clara took the envelope. Why are you giving this to me? Because you're exactly the kind of person they need. Someone who understands what it means to fight for something. Someone who won't back down when things get hard. Crawford tipped his hat. Think about it. There's no rush. He walked away, leaving Clara holding an envelope that felt heavier than paper should. She rode back to the ranch as fast as the horse could carry her. The whole way her mind churned. The job offer. The possibility. A life built entirely on her own terms, answering to no one, dependent on no one. 2 months ago, it would have been everything she wanted. Now she was not so sure. When she reached the cabin, she found Jesse sitting up in bed. He looked pale and tired, but his eyes were clear. You came back. I promised I would. Thought maybe you'd decide town life suited you better. Clara sat on the edge of the bed. She took his hand. Sloane's been arrested. Marshal Crawford came in from the territorial government. He had warrants. It's over, Jesse. Really over this time. Jesse closed his eyes. When he opened them again, they were wet. I don't know what to say. Say you'll stop getting stabbed by men in the desert. He laughed weakly. I'll try. Clara pulled the envelope from her pocket. She told him about Crawford's offer, about the job, about the life she could have if she wanted it. Jesse listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. That's a good offer, he said finally. I know. Steady work, respect, independence, everything you never had before. I know. You'd be a fool not to take it. Clara looked at him. At his face weathered and honest. At his hands scarred from work and fighting. At his eyes which had seen her from the very beginning. Maybe I'm a fool then. Clara. I spent my whole life having choices made for me. Where to go, what to do, who to belong to. Then you gave me the first real choice I ever had. She squeezed his hand. I'm choosing to stay. Not because I owe you. Not because I have nowhere else to go. Because this is where I want to be. With you. Jesse's breath caught. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He pulled her down and kissed her. It was not gentle this time. It was fierce and desperate and full of everything they had been too afraid to say. When they broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. I love you, Jesse said. I've loved you since you spit in Sloane's face on that auction block. I love you too. Clara pressed her forehead to his. I think I've loved you since you tore up that paper. They stayed that way for a long time, holding each other, letting the truth of it sink in. So what now? Jesse asked. Now you heal, and I keep running the ranch until you're back on your feet. And when you're ready, when I'm ready. Clara smiled. When you're ready, we build something together, something that lasts. Jesse pulled her closer. I like the sound of that. 3 weeks later, Jesse could walk with a crutch. His ribs were healing. His strength was returning. Clara had managed the ranch alone the entire time, and managed it well. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Jesse reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. This was my mother's. It was a ring, simple silver band with a tiny blue stone. Clara's heart stopped. Jesse, I ain't good with words, never have been, but I know what I feel. I know what I want. He took her hand. Clara Weston, will you marry me? Not because you owe me anything, not because you have nowhere else to go, but because I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving I deserve you. Clara looked at the ring, at Jesse, at the cabin they had built together, the life they had fought for, the future that stretched out before them like an open road. Yes, Jesse's face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen. He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. You just made me the happiest man in Arizona. Only Arizona. The whole damn country. Clara laughed and kissed him. Outside, the night was quiet. Inside, the fire crackled warm. And for the first time in her life, Clara Weston knew exactly where she belonged. The wedding took place on a Sunday in late summer. Martha Delgado organized everything. She said Clara deserved a proper ceremony after everything she had been through, and she would not hear any arguments about it. Clara wore a simple white dress that Martha had sewn by hand. Jesse wore a clean shirt and his best boots polished until they shone. Sheriff Hadley stood as witness. The preacher came all the way from Tucson because Martha had written him a letter that, according to him, would have melted a stone heart. They exchanged vows under an open sky with the ranch stretching out behind them and the future stretching out ahead. When the preacher said Jesse could kiss his bride, Clara grabbed his collar and kissed him first. The small crowd laughed. Jesse turned red. Martha wiped her eyes. "You're stuck with me now," Clara whispered against his lips. "Wouldn't have it any other way." That night they sat on the porch of their cabin and watched stars appear one by one. Clara leaned against Jesse's shoulder, his arm wrapped around her. "Mrs. Calhoun," he said, testing the words, "has a nice ring to it. I was thinking about keeping Weston." Jesse looked at her. "Really?" "No." Clara laughed. "Your face, though." "Cruel woman. I married a cruel woman." "You did, and now you're stuck with her." They sat in comfortable silence. The night was warm. The world was quiet. Clara could not remember ever feeling this peaceful. "I want children," she said suddenly. Jesse's arm tightened around her. "Yeah, at least 2, maybe 3. I want them to have what I never did. A home, parents who love them, a chance to be whoever they want to be." "That's a beautiful dream." "Is it just a dream? Or do you want it too?" Jesse turned her face toward his. His eyes were serious and tender. "I want whatever you want. I want to build a life with you. I want to watch our children grow up on this land. I want to grow old sitting on this porch holding your hand." His voice cracked. "I want everything, Clara. Everything I thought I'd never have again after Thomas died." Clara felt tears slide down her cheeks. She did not wipe them away. "Then let's have everything." She kissed him, and the night wrapped around them like a promise. The first year of marriage was hard in ways Clara had not expected. Running a ranch meant endless work. Mending fences, tending cattle, fighting drought and disease and the relentless Arizona sun. But it was good work, honest work. Work that built something instead of tearing it down. Clara's reading improved every day. By autumn, she could read full books without stumbling. She devoured everything she could find. History, poetry, agricultural manuals. Martha kept bringing her new volumes from town, and Clara kept asking for more. "You're going to read every book in the territory," Jesse teased one evening. "Maybe I will." "What happens when you run out?" "Then I'll write my own." Jesse looked at her with surprise, then admiration, then something deeper. You could write about everything that happened, about being sold, about finding your way here, about building a life. Who would want to read that? Anyone who's ever been told they weren't worth anything. Anyone who's ever been afraid to hope. That's a lot of people, Clara. She thought about it. The idea took root in her mind and grew. Winter came hard that year. Snow piled against the cabin walls. The cattle huddled together for warmth. Jesse and Clara spent long nights by the fire, reading aloud to each other, talking about everything and nothing. One cold morning, Clara woke up sick. She barely made it to the basin before she vomited. Jesse was at her side immediately. "What's wrong? Are you hurt?" "I don't think so." Clara sat back, wiping her mouth. "I feel strange. Not bad strange. Just strange." Martha came to check on her 2 days later. She took one look at Clara and smiled. "How long have you been sick in the mornings?" "About a week." "Why?" Martha's smile widened. "Honey, you're pregnant." The world stopped. "What?" "Pregnant. With child. Going to be a mother." Clara's hand went to her stomach, flat still, but inside something new was growing. Something impossible and miraculous and terrifying. "Jesse," she whispered. He was outside chopping wood. Clara ran to him, not caring about the cold or the snow or anything except the news bursting inside her. "Jesse." He dropped the axe. "What? What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." Clara grabbed his hands. "Everything's right. Everything's perfect." "Clara, you're scaring me." "I'm pregnant." Jesse stared at her. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. We're having a baby." The axe lay forgotten in the snow. Jesse lifted Clara off her feet and spun her around, whooping with joy. Then he stopped, suddenly setting her down with exaggerated care. "Sorry. Is that okay? I didn't hurt you." "The baby." "The baby is fine. I'm fine. We're all fine." Jesse knelt in the snow in front of her. He pressed his forehead to her stomach. "Hello in there," he said softly. "I'm your pa. I'm going to love you more than anything in this world, you and your mama. You're everything to me." Clara ran her fingers through his hair. Tears froze on her cheeks. "We're going to be parents. We're going to be parents." The pregnancy was not easy. Clara's body changed in ways that frightened her. She grew tired. Her back ached. Some days she could barely keep food down. But Jesse was there. Always there. He took over the heavier ranch work without being asked. He rubbed her feet at night. He read to her when she was too exhausted to read herself. "You're going to spoil me," she said one evening. "That's the plan." "What happens when the baby comes?" "You can't spoil both of us. Watch me." Spring arrived with mud and wildflowers. Clara's belly grew round and heavy. Martha visited every week, checking on her progress, teaching her what to expect. "First babies are always unpredictable," Martha warned. "Could come early, could come late. Just be ready for anything." Clara tried to be ready. She prepared blankets. She organized the small room Jesse had added to the cabin. She practiced breathing the way Martha taught her. Nothing prepared her for the reality. The pain started in the middle of the night, sharp and sudden like a knife twisting in her spine. Clara gasped and reached for Jesse. "It's time." Jesse leaped out of bed so fast he nearly fell. "Now, right now." "I don't think the baby is going to wait." He rode for Martha while Clara paced the cabin, breathing through contractions that came closer and closer together. The pain was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Worse than Horace's beatings. Worse than hunger. Worse than fear. But this pain had purpose. This pain was bringing her child into the world. Martha arrived as dawn broke. She took charge immediately, ordering Jesse to boil water and Clara to lie down. "You're doing fine," Martha said, checking her progress. "Just keep breathing. Your body knows what to do." Clara wanted to scream that her body had no idea what it was doing, that nothing about this felt natural or right or okay. But she bit her lip and breathed and pushed when Martha told her to push. Hours passed. The sun rose higher. Clara's strength faded. She had been in labor since midnight. It was now past noon. "I can't," she gasped. "Martha, I can't do this." "Yes, you can. You're the strongest woman I know. You survived being sold on an auction block. You can survive this." "This is worse." "I know, honey, but it's almost over. One more push. Give me everything you've got." Clara screamed. She pushed. She felt something tear loose inside her. And then a new sound filled the cabin, high and thin and absolutely miraculous. A baby's cry. "It's a girl," Martha announced, her voice breaking. "Clara, it's a beautiful baby girl." Clara reached out with trembling arms. Martha placed the tiny bundle against her chest. Clara looked down at a wrinkled face, eyes squeezed shut, mouth open in protest at the cold, bright world. "Hello?" Clara whispered. "Hello, little one." The baby stopped crying. Her eyes opened dark and unfocused, seeking her mother's face. "Jesse." Clara's voice was raw. "Jesse, come see." He had been pacing outside the door, forbidden by Martha from entering during the hardest parts. Now he rushed in, his face pale with worry. Then he saw his daughter. His knees buckled. He caught himself on the bed frame, tears streaming down his cheeks. "She's beautiful." His voice was barely audible. "Clara, she's so beautiful. She looks like you." "No, she's got your eyes. I can tell already." Clara laughed weakly. "She's an hour old. She doesn't have anybody's eyes yet." "She's got yours, I'm sure of it." He sat on the edge of the bed, one arm around Clara, one hand resting gently on the baby's head. "What do we call her?" Clara had thought about this for months. She had considered dozens of names, but looking at her daughter now, only one felt right. "Rose, after your mother's favorite flower." Jesse's breath caught. He had told her once long ago that his mother had loved roses, that she had grown them in every place they lived, no matter how poor or temporary. Rose Calhoun. Rose Calhoun. The baby made a small sound, almost like agreement. Jesse and Clara looked at each other and laughed through their tears. A family. They were a family now. Rose grew fast. She was a curious child, always reaching for things, always wanting to explore. She took her first steps at 9 months earlier than any baby Martha had ever seen. "That one's going to be trouble," Martha predicted. "She's going to be wonderful," Clara corrected. Both turned out to be true. When Rose was 2, Clara discovered she was pregnant again. This time the labor was easier. Faster. A boy arrived at sunset, red-faced and squalling. They named him Thomas after Jesse's brother. Jesse held his son and wept. He would have loved this, he managed. Thomas would have loved being an uncle. "He's watching," Clara said. "I believe that. Somewhere he's watching, and he's proud of you." "You think so?" "I know so." The ranch expanded. Jesse bought more cattle. They hired help for the busy seasons. The cabin grew new rooms, one for each child, plus a large common area where the family gathered in the evenings. Clara started teaching Rose to read at 3 years old. The little girl took to it immediately, sounding out words with fierce concentration. "She's a natural," Martha said during one visit. "She's her mother's daughter," Jesse replied. Clara said nothing, but she smiled in a way that held 20 years of pain and 20 years of healing. When Rose turned 5, Clara did something she had never expected to do. She wrote a letter, not to anyone in particular. Just a letter. About her life. About being sold. About finding Jesse. About building something from nothing. She showed it to Martha, expecting criticism. Instead, Martha cried. "This is beautiful," the older woman said. "Clara, this is the most beautiful thing I've ever read. It's just my story. Your story is exactly what people need to hear. You should send it to the newspapers. Let them publish it. No one wants to read about a girl who got sold by her mother. Everyone wants to read about someone who survived the impossible and came out stronger. Trust me." Clara did not send the letter, but she kept writing. Every night after the children were asleep, she sat by the fire and put words on paper. Her story. Jesse's story. The story of everyone who had ever been told they were worthless and refused to believe it. The pages piled up. Months passed. Then years. When Rose was 8 and Thomas was 5, Clara finished her manuscript. 300 pages of memory and pain and hope. Jesse read it in one sitting. He did not speak for a long time afterward. "This is going to change lives," he said finally. "You really think so?" "I know so, because it changed mine." They sent the manuscript to a publisher in San Francisco. Clara expected rejection. What she received instead was a letter offering to print 10,000 copies. The book came out the following spring. It was called From Auction Block to Open Sky, A Woman's Journey. Clara's name was on the cover. Within a month it had sold out. They printed more. Those sold out too. Letters arrived at the ranch by the dozens, then hundreds. Women who had survived similar horrors. Men who had found redemption in unexpected places. Children who wanted to know if Clara's story was really true. She answered every letter personally. It took hours each day. She did not mind. "You're famous?" Jessie teased one evening. "I'm tired," Clara replied. "There's a difference. Can't you be both?" "Apparently." He pulled her close. Outside, Rose and Thomas chased each other around the corral, their laughter carrying on the evening air. "Are you happy?" Jessie asked. Clara considered the question. She thought about the girl she had been standing on an auction block in Copper Creek. The girl who had been told she was worthless every day of her life. The girl who had not known her own name, could not read her own name, had no name that anyone cared to remember. She thought about the woman she had become. A wife, a mother, a writer, a survivor. "Yes," she said. "I'm happy." "Good." Jessie kissed her forehead. "Because I plan to make you even happier." "How?" "I talked to Martha yesterday. She said the school in town needs a new teacher. The old one is moving to California." Clara's heart skipped. A teacher. Someone to teach reading and writing to the children. Someone who understands what it means to learn late. Someone who won't give up on students just because they're struggling. "Jessie, I'm not qualified." "You're the most qualified person I know. You taught yourself to read at 23. You wrote a book that's changing lives across the country. If that ain't qualified, I don't know what is." Clara stared at him. The dream she had never dared to dream, the life she had never dared to imagine, was being offered to her like a gift. "What about the ranch? Thomas is old enough to help with the cattle. Rose practically runs the household already. And I've got good men working for me now. We'll manage." "You really think I can do this?" "Clara." Jessie took her face in his hands. "You can do anything. You've proven that 100 times over. Stop doubting yourself." She laughed. It came out watery. "Old habits. Time to build new ones." Clara took the teaching position. She started with 12 students. Within a year, she had 30. Within 5 years, the school had grown so large, they had to build a new building. Clara taught every child the same way Jessie had taught her. Patient, steady, never giving up no matter how many times they failed. Some of her students were children of wealthy ranchers. Others were children of former slaves, freed but still fighting for their place in the world. Clara taught them all equally because she knew what it meant to be told you had no worth. "Worth isn't given," she told her students on the first day of every term. "Worth is built, choice by choice, day by day. No one can take it from you unless you let them." The words spread. Parents repeated them. Children grew up believing them. And slowly, one student at a time, the world changed. Years passed like water over stone. Rose grew into a beautiful young woman who married a doctor from Phoenix and moved to the city. Thomas took over the ranch, running it with the same quiet competence his father had always shown. Jessie's hair turned gray. Clara's hands grew wrinkled. They moved slower now, spoke softer. But the love between them never dimmed. On their 30th wedding anniversary, they sat on the same porch where they had sat on their first night as husband and wife. The ranch stretched out before them, larger now, more prosperous. Grandchildren played in the yard. The sound of their laughter carried on the wind. "We did good," Jessie said. "We did. You especially." Clara shook her head. "We did it together. I couldn't have done any of it without you. That first day when I saw you on that auction block, I never imagined this." "Neither did I. I just knew I couldn't let them take you. Something in your eyes, the way you spit in Sloane's face." Jessie laughed softly. "I thought that woman has more fight in her than anyone I've ever met. She deserves a chance. You gave me that chance. You gave it to yourself. I just opened the door. You're the one who walked through." Clara leaned her head on his shoulder. His arm wrapped around her, familiar as breathing. "I love you, Jessie Calhoun." "I love you too, Clara Calhoun. Today and tomorrow and every day after that." They sat together as the sun went down, watching their grandchildren play, listening to the wind, feeling the weight of all the years they had shared. Clara Weston had been born unwanted. She had been raised without love. She had been sold by her own mother for gambling money. But she had refused to stay broken. She had learned to read. She had learned to fight. She had learned to love and be loved in return. She had built a family, a home, a legacy that would outlast her. And when her story was finally told, it was not a story of tragedy. It was a story of triumph. Of a woman who had been told she was worthless and proved the whole world wrong. Clara Weston Calhoun was many things, but worthless was never one of them. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who needs to hear that their worth is not defined by their past. Everyone deserves a chance to build their own future. Everyone deserves to be chosen. And everyone, no matter where they start, has the power to choose who they become.